Who is this Santa? He's scaring my kid.
I am a slasher movie purist, and as much as I would love to see the return of a lot of the classic characters, I'm really enjoying this era where Art the Clown is kind of single-handedly representing the slasher genre and has suddenly become this cultural phenomenon, at least in the world of horror and horror movie fans, that now you're seeing Art the Clown everywhere. In every Spirit Halloween store, you're seeing so many memes and posts and pictures of Art the Clown everywhere, and people are very aware of the Terrifier franchise. It's probably going to be the #1 movie of this weekend, which is just crazy to me that Terrifier is becoming so mainstream because it's so extreme. This is such the kind of movie that you would not expect to see. At least I wouldn't expect to see it in my local theaters. Now look, I guess there's not really a whole lot to say before I get into spoilers, and that's kind of like the real meat of what I want to talk about in this video. But before that, I'm going to give you my spoiler-free review. But here's how I'm going to start the review, is that this is Terrifier 3. So if you don't know what to expect at this point, like, I cannot imagine somebody walking into Terrifier 3 as their first experience or their first exposure, because first of all, in the first 20 minutes of this movie, you're just going to have your mind blown because nothing is going to make any goddamn sense, and it's going to be so ridiculously over the top and gory and bizarre that you're just going to feel like you've literally stepped into hell. All right. So like, it's Terrifier. So if you've seen the first two, and you've seen the extreme lengths that the series is willing to go to, you've seen the violence and the decapitations and the skin getting ripped off people's faces and the creativity when it comes to the kill scenes, yeah, you're gonna get that again here. But the thing that Terrifier 2 introduced, not just Sienna as the main character, but it started to introduce more of the lore of Art the Clown. And that was something that I was hoping this movie was going to touch on more, because I love figuring out the lore of these types of characters and demonic creatures and stuff. Like, I like figuring it out, and I like watching the characters figure it out as time goes on. And I could see that Terrifier seems like the type of franchise that, you know, the first one was super low budget, independent. It was great in its own way, but it was Terrifier 2 that really took that kind of next step and made it into something bigger or more grand, more epic. You know, it's like a 2.5-hour slasher film. It was the Terminator 2 of slasher films, I think is what I called it in my original review. And so now that we're going in that direction, we have to make it feel big. You know, we have to make it feel like there's something, I don't want to say like apocalyptic, but there's something big going on here with the dynamic between Art the Clown and Sienna, and, you know, what all of that means. So I was hoping we would get a little bit more of that, and we do. Not as much as I would like, but we get enough that I think I can start to kind of piece together the ideas of what's happening here. And I don't blame the creators for maybe coming up with this as each sequel comes out. Like, I don't think the entire lore and backstory of Art the Clown was figured out way back when. Maybe it was, I don't know. But it seems like with each installment, they're just adding a little bit more, getting a little bit deeper with it, a little bit more complex, but they're not taking it so far that, you know, the exposition takes over the movie. So the first two Terrifier movies take place on Halloween, or right around Halloween. This movie decides to go in a slightly different direction, and it's right around Christmas time. So we get to see a Christmas-themed Terrifier Art the Clown movie. We get to see Art the Clown dressed as Santa Claus. We get to see him he's always had his sack, actually, but now it makes a little bit more sense because it's Christmas themed. And we get to see a lot of elements of that, like, you know, Santa Claus on the roof and the mall Santa and, you know, presents under the tree. There's all of these different fun Christmas elements that you can play with to turn it into, you know, a macabre horror setting, and they absolutely do. The other unique thing about this movie is that Art the Clown is just as much of a main character as Sienna is. And in fact, for a while, there's two separate storylines that are happening at the same time, where one, you're really following Art the Clown as a main character. They do this a bit in Terrifier 2 as well, but it's even more so here, where you are just he's the protagonist, for a good chunk of this movie. You're just following him around, seeing what he does, seeing the people he interacts with, seeing how he gains this or that, and watching him kill people. And that's like the first half of the movie is a lot of that. And then we also get the reintroduction of Sienna, who has now, been in an institution for a number of years. We're caught up to present day. And she goes to live with her aunt and uncle, as well as her cousin, who's a little girl that's, kind of views Sienna as this really awesome person. She doesn't know anything that happened in Terrifier 2, but she remembers their time that they had when they were younger together. She looks up to her. She's essentially that kind of older, even though they're cousins, but it's that older sibling dynamic where she just really looks up to and admires Sienna. And they do a really creative thing with that because Sienna is dealing with so much baggage and trauma from the last movie that she's seeing hallucinations, she's on medication, no one really believes her with what happened, she's estranged from her brother, Jonathan, who's still in the movie, but not as much, and I was actually a little bit disappointed how sidelined he was, but he's there, he's around. But the new main dynamic is pretty much with Sienna and her cousin. So that's kind of like the new sibling dynamic in this one. Maybe the actor that was playing Jonathan just couldn't be as available. I don't know. He's definitely in the movie and he has a significant role, but it's a lot more subdued than in the first one. But anyways, the point of what I was trying to say is that, she's looking up to Sienna as this heroic figure, but really, we as the audience get to see Sienna how she actually is, which is somebody that's deeply shaken up, deeply wounded, and deeply hurt from what happened in the last movie. And I was actually pretty impressed with how emotional they were able to take it. Like, I loved Lauren Rivera's performance in Terrifier 2. I thought she was fantastic. But in this one, a lot of proper care is given to, I would say how someone would respond in that situation. Just replace the situation with any like big traumatic event, and how much that would fuck you up as a person and how much that starts to hurt all of your other relationships, whether with your family or trying to connect with people, or, if you have people kind of a little bit aware of the situation. Because in this movie, pretty much what happened in part 2, people are aware of. They just don't know that Art the Clown is like a demonic entity, it was just like a serial killer. So they see Sienna as a survivor and they're curious about her. They're like, ooh, it's that girl that survived the killings. And like, would you want to do an interview and all this stuff? And, we've seen stuff like that before in like the Scream franchise, whatever, where people just won't leave these victims alone. But it's very much expanded upon in this movie. And I think that Lauren Rivera does a fantastic job kind of navigating how somebody would respond to all that. Now, for the things that you all came for, it's here. It's definitely here. The opening scene will give it to you right off the bat of all of the violence and the gore in this movie. And it definitely tries to top the second movie. Do I think it fully succeeded? Maybe not personally, but I could definitely see how it does in many ways. But it also depends on what your sensibilities are, because there is violence done to children in this movie that you don't really get to see on screen too much, but it's there. It's definitely there, as well as just different ways and methods that Art the Clown kills people and tortures people. And so it all depends on like what your sensibilities are. Like some people are really, creeped out by like eye scenes, like eyes getting gouged out, and some people are really creeped out by like teeth, like some people are really creeped out by, characters in the dark, or some people are creeped out by flesh getting torn up. It just depends on what your thing is. If there's any particular torture method or kill method that like gives you that queasy feeling, if Terrifier gets around to doing it, it's not going to shy away with the way that it does it. But what I do appreciate is it's still using practical effects to the best of their ability, and they definitely take it as far as you can go. There's a number of sequences here. One may be the opening kill that will get people. One may be a scene with Santa Claus. That I'm going to say, a mall Santa, not a real Santa. Although they should introduce the real Santa. There's supernatural shit going on. Why not, There's a scene with a Santa Claus that will get people. There's the shower scene people are talking about, which I had heard like people were talking about like, oh, the shower scene. Okay, it is extreme. Yes. But if you've seen Terrifier 1 and 2, I don't think it's as extreme as some of the things in Terrifier 2. It is extreme, yes. If this was your first time seeing a Terrifier movie, this will fuck you up. But by part 3, if you've seen the other two, the shower scene, it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. I like it. I like it. But the one that got me, and again, this is all about sensibilities, is a scene towards the end. I won't say what it is, but it involves rats. It involves rats. So have fun dreaming about what that could be. And so essentially you have that setup. You have these two parallel storylines that are happening at the same time that ultimately converge as the movie gets closer to its climax. You have the Sienna storyline with her dealing with what happened in part 2, and you have Art the Clown doing his business, going around killing people, and eventually the stories collide. In the meantime, you know, you get a lot of great set pieces. Like, you do get that shower scene, you do get the Santa scene, you get the mall scene, which is pretty good. And all these different little scenarios that just, some will maybe make you want to run out of the theater. Other ones will have you clapping. And I do also have to say that I think this movie gives the most articulation to Art the Clown himself. I think the David Howard Thornton, he gets a lot to do here, and you get to see like so much of Art kind of being silly, kind of that dark humor stuff where he's just like super excited, or he's like just like pointing at people and laughing as he's killing them or something, or he's just like doing some kind of funny mannerism. Like there's one, I think it's in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler, where he's making like a snow angel in the blood, you know, where he's wearing the Santa Claus suit and he's just like, you know, dancing around as Santa Claus. There's so many like horrific kill scenes that happen, but then it's immediately offset with Art the Clown just being a silly goose. And so like you gotta just embrace him for what he is. And, you know, I think it's really fascinating that Terrifier is so popular, and I want to embrace it while it's happening because, you know, I was born in 1989, so I never got to experience Freddy Krueger when he was at the height of his popularity, when the movies were actually coming out. Like the first Freddy Krueger movie I ever got to see in the theater was Freddy vs. Jason. You know, that's when I was finally old enough to see a Freddy movie in the theater. So Art the Clown is kind of the guy right now. He's the guy of the 2020s. And so I think it's fun to kind of embrace the current slasher. You know, some people hate these movies and call them trash. And I would maybe say it's like the best trash. You know, like you're the raccoon in the dumpster and you find like the best fucking cupcake of your life. And yes, you had to go into the dumpster to find it, but it's a really good cupcake, and you just want to enjoy it while you can. And that's kind of how I feel about these movies. But yes, overall, I did enjoy Terrifier 3, but I will say that if you're not a fan, if you haven't seen the first two, I can't imagine anybody coming into this and, one, understanding what the fuck is going on, and two, trying to find some enjoyment out of it, because it's dark, it's macabre, it's mean-spirited, you know, but it's also really funny. And it's also really uplifting with Sienna's character and the things that she has to go through. I think, like I said, I think they did a really, really good job, as absurd and over-the-top as this movie is, really grounding her character and making her feel like a character that's really been through shit. Like, and maybe it's all in her performance, you know, it's all in the acting performance, I don't know. But I think that she is fantastic in this movie, like absolutely fantastic. Overall, I highly recommend it. As it's October, it's spooky season. I mean, I think this is something that you want to see in the theater now. You know, don't deny yourself of like the current cultural horror zeitgeist. Like, be there to experience it while you can. If these movies aren't your cup of tea, some people don't like the over-the-top gore and violence, and I completely understand that. You know, everybody's different. Everybody has different types of horror that they like, whether they like supernatural stuff or found footage stuff or slasher stuff, whatever your thing is. You know, this is definitely not for everybody, but I enjoyed it for what it was, and I'll definitely be looking forward to future installments. As of right now, I'm definitely okay with more sequels. Like, I know that eventually every slasher franchise, it takes a deep fall off, but since we do have the same creative team of, you know, Damien Leone, or however you pronounce his name, and the same creators and the same director, it does feel like there's consistency from movie to movie. And I do think that one of the biggest problems with slasher films falling off in yesteryear, is because every single movie would be so different, and you wouldn't have that sense of consistency of characters and filmmakers and stuff. So if this stays on that line, at least for maybe one or two more movies, after that, I think it's really going to maybe wear out its welcome a little bit, but I'm on board for at least a couple more. So you have my recommendation. I enjoyed it. So from this point forward in the video, I'm going to delve into some spoilers that I want to talk about that I think are interesting. So if you haven't seen the movie, go ahead and click off now. Come back to the video later. You've been warned. This is the spoiler section. Okay. So the biggest thing I wanted this movie to handle was giving us more lore about Art the Clown. I mean, it's kind of cool to not know. I think that Michael Myers, is one of my favorite slashers, and I think when they began to try to explain him in, part 6 or whatever, that's when it started to go downhill, because you didn't need to know. All you needed to know was that he was evil, right? He was just this embodiment of evil. With Art the Clown, there is something about him, though, that really compels me to know and understand what the fuck is going on. I can't quite put my finger on why. I just need an answer. Maybe because he is so, is he human? Is he a demon? What the fuck is he? I don't know. There's something about it that I need to know. And they give you some lore in this movie, but it's very quick, okay? And I know I was in the movie theater. I was like, I really wish I could, pause and rewind a minute and a half and listen to that part in the movie again, because I don't know if I have it straight, but I'm gonna make an attempt here. So the Jonathan character was doing research into demonology and stuff. You gotta take it for what it is, man. I'm a Buffy fan. This is how they always figure out shit about demons. They just read it in a book somewhere. It works. It's fine. Anyways, so he figured out that when a demonic entity is trying to come into our world, it basically sort of enhances and takes possession of a very evil figure, right? So from what I understand from what they're trying to say, if I got this right, bear with me. I watched this one time in the theater, and it was a quick line of dialogue that I tried to understand, and then the rest of the movie kept going, so I'm doing my best here. But from what I understand, it seems to me that Art the Clown was most likely already a serial killer. He was a fucked up, deranged person, and a demonic entity has basically made him, super strong, immortal, and kind of enhanced his ability of killing so that that demonic entity can exist in our world. And the demonic entity was the form of that little girl that you saw in Terrifier 2. And that's kind of the actual demon. So that's the actual creature. And that's why Art the Clown was kind of seeing her and doing the patty cake thing right after he got resurrected. Because if I understand it right, that's the demonic entity that's trying to come into our world. So basically how I understand it is Art is an enhanced version of who he was when he was a regular serial killer, but now he's this demonic serial killer, right? And the real demonic entity is sort of just this incorporeal thing, this little girl that's kind of pulling the strings, I guess. But in this movie, that entity goes into the body of the survivor from the original Terrifier. So the one that has the fucked up face. And it was kind of confusing towards the end, because it was almost as if the demonic entity was using the vessel of I think Victoria. Is that her name? Victoria? I think. I gotta double check. Yeah, so it was using Victoria basically to be able to speak and communicate and talk to Sienna, right? So that's kind of how I understand it. So I think it's all kind of one demonic entity, but it needs Art the Clown to be enhanced and kill people in order for it to thrive. And then it also was able to take possession of Victoria at the same time in order to communicate with Sienna. If that makes any sense, I don't know. And Sienna is this chosen entity of good, which is kind of established in Terrifier 2. With her father leaving her behind the sword that could kill Art, momentarily kill him until the third movie. And there's some interesting stuff going on here. So she has a few memories of her dad in this movie. And there's one moment where, she wants a female he's a comic artist, and she wants a female superhero. So he creates a hero specifically for her, which is the armor, with the wings and the sword that we saw in Terrifier 2. And for whatever reason, when he created this character, it basically became like this representation of this person that is meant to go up against this demon, because it's like a parallel. There's like the evil force and the force of good at the same time. And when she takes the photo, there's this really cool scene of seeing this like demon creature that's like, it's got a chain around its neck, and it's being held by this like Virgin Mary statue, and it's like literally forging the sword. It's basically like this heavenly being is forcing this demon to forge a sword to kill another demon, which is like the most metal shit I've ever heard. So that's how I took it. So it did take the supernatural elements of the second movie, saying that Sienna is like this chosen one to fight against it, and it pushed that concept even further. And, you know, this is the spoiler section, so Sienna lives, and it looks like that's going to be the case moving forward. So Sienna is not just the final girl, she's the chosen girl. Like, she is the one to fight Art, and probably the only one that can kill him. Now I'll just talk about a couple of sequences, because it's spoilers, that I enjoyed. I think my favorite scene of the movie was the scene in the bar with the mall Santa. It was the funniest scene, number one. It had Clint Howard showed up in it, which was great. And it just, I just love this sequence so much. This was kind of like my favorite little, like I said, the storylines are separate, and it was just kind of like Art the Clown's adventures. You know, he just like, oh, like he goes over here and does this, then he goes and does this. And there's one scene where he's just walking by a bar, he looks in and sees a guy dressed as Santa, and he gets like just as excited as a kid would. Like, it's Santa Claus, like, you know, he goes in and he like points at a picture of Santa and then points at the guy like you're Santa Claus, right? He goes and he sits with them, and they're like broing out and everything, and it's just like the funniest fucking thing. And then all of a sudden he pees on Santa's lap when he sits on his lap, which causes chaos to ensue. But that was my favorite scene of the movie. That was so funny to me. The opening sequence I thought was very, very effective, with the little girl hearing, you know, Santa on the roof and everything. Now, when it comes to the killing of children in this movie, I don't have a problem with movies kill kids. I actually always respect and appreciate the balls to do it, because so many movies are afraid to do it. But there is a way to do it, like, within good taste and within poor taste. And I actually think this movie did it within good taste, because it doesn't linger on it. It's the first kill is off screen. The second kill is off screen. They're both kind of off screen. You only see the aftermath of it. And the scene where he's in the mall, where he actually takes the place of the mall Santa and gives the kids all the toys and stuff, and he's getting kicked out. That was like like all these funny dark comedy moments of Art. Those are my favorite things about the movies, more so than the kills themselves. I just like seeing Art the Clown just be himself. He's just a funny character. Now, the shower scene is the one that people are talking about the most. And yes, like I said, it is extreme, but I didn't think it was as extreme as the bedroom kill in part 2, and I didn't think it was as extreme as the girl getting sawed in half in the first one. Two characters are fucking in the shower. Art pulls out a chainsaw and, you know, jumps in the shower and starts cutting them up, whatever. Cuts them, like, cuts the guy, like, shoves the chainsaw up his ass, you know, and cuts him completely in half. And it's, I mean, it's absurd. It's over the top. It's what you want from Terrifier. But like I said, I don't think that that was as extreme as the bedroom kill from part 2. But I think maybe tone has a lot to do with it also, where, like, the shower scene was just so, like, he's just happy. He's just like slicing away with the chainsaw. It's just like a fun scene, you know? I don't know what that says about me. But the bedroom scene in part 2 was a little bit more, I think, sadistic. It was a little bit more like, bro, okay, like, you're good. Just stop. You're fine. But yeah, so that's the big one here. But the one that got me the most, like I said, was the rat one. So there's a scene where he takes a tube and, like, forcibly shoves it down Sienna's aunt's throat, and then, like, force feeds rats down her throat. That, I mean, it's not overly gory, but it's just like the thought of that just kind of freaked me out more. And I think that those are the kind of things that get me in horror movies more. It's kind of like just that, like, horrid thought of just like, oh, Jesus Christ. It's not the gore, it's not the blood, but it's the thought of, like, having rats forced down your throat, where I'm just like, ugh, like, that got me. So that was, like, the biggest one for me, and it's, like, the least gory. The final sequence when, you know, Sienna grabs the sword, you know, rises up to her true calling and fights Art. I mean, that fight scene was wonderful. That fight scene was great. It was so good. My only gripe of Terrifier 2 is that I think that the ending battle sequence goes on, like, a little bit too long. This one was perfect. It was concise. It was to the point. It was brutal. It was good. Now, overall, I still think I like Terrifier 2 the best. And then I guess I would say this one next and then the first one. But the first one just has the drawback of just not really like solidifying itself just yet. But it also has the charm of being this low budget, you know, gritty, just little, everything takes place in like a warehouse. You know, it's got its own charm in many ways. So it's a little bit tough between part 3 and the first one for me, but I guess because there's more going on, Sienna is a great character, you know, Art the Clown is a lot funnier here, so I guess I would say 3. So I'd go part 2, part 3, then part 1, then like the All Hallows Eve segments after that. So yeah, guys, if you have seen Terrifier 3, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Leave all your thoughts, theories, opinions about where you want to see the franchise go from here. As always, thanks for watching, guys. Please give the video a like, thumbs up, and a comment if you enjoyed it. If you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have Patreon, channel memberships, and all that fun stuff where you can follow me down below. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. I just watched Art the Clown butcher people for 2 hours. My brain's fucked up. Anyways, I love you guys. I'll talk to you later.